So now we're going to look at how you demonstrate rigor in how you've analysed the results of your search on a particular topic on the Social Sciences Citation Index. Once again, I'm going to refer to the article of my own that is findable within the Social Sciences Citation Index. I think it's important that everybody probably read this to get an overall sense of what's involved in the process as well. So just to kind of pick up on what we had looked at in our early evidence collection from the SSCI video. We looked there how to identify a list of article abstracts in your topic, how to add them to a marked list, and how then to print them off or move them to a PDF so they can be separated out between your group and analysed that way. In this video and the next one that's going to be on the analysis of the data and evaluation, we'll examine how to conduct an analysis of the content in these in order to kind of tease out some of the big categorical areas in which they address. But in this one, we're going to look at how you can demonstrate that you've rigorously looked through the abstracts and if needed, the articles of each, the full text of the articles to kind of distill some of the main points of information that come from that. So once again, as I mentioned already, this article, it's my own one, Nursing Management, Religion and Spirituality, a Bibliometric Review, a Research Agenda and Implications for Practice. It's actually quite a short article when you read it, but if you go straight to the bottom of page 23, you'll see that once you have that list of abstracts, and it'll identify, they should give you the most of the information that you need for the analysis. To look to get the rest of what you need, you will probably have to click into the full article, full text as well, most of which is available on the library databases in Maynooth University. So just to show you what this particular article tried to look at religion and spirituality from the perspective of managers, of nurses who were managers, what they needed to know, what the research had been saying, what needed to be looked into, and how this would impact on their jobs in practice. Interesting, there's a very rich research culture on nursing, all aspects of nursing practice, not just the clinical and health related ones in the field of nursing. So there was a lot of information to look through. So just to look at that article with a view to kind of helping you decide which categories you and your group are going to look through, you go to the bottom of page 293. And so at the bottom of page 293, and I've highlighted them a little bit, I talk about, this is after I've identified all of the articles in the search term. I pulled them out in a different way. I just want to say here in this article, I did use some health-based databases as well. For this video is just solely about using the Social Sciences Citation Index, and it's the one where most material is found generally in the area of social sciences. So you can see the list of articles there. Just to say a little bit more about them, we can see that they were concerned with just providing stats and account really on the number of the journals where most information was published. What this does is it says that if there's a researcher in the area or in the field, or somebody who's interested in this and wants to read more research on it, the result of this will tell you where most of the relevant research is published. The type of article, and this is quite important for reducing the number of articles that you're going to look at. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next video on the analysis of data and evidence. Some articles that I found, although they were listed as peer-reviewed articles or research-based articles, they were conceptual or theoretical, and some, even though they were badged as articles and not editorials, just had editorial opinion. Some were reviews of research, which are useful, and some were empirical, which means they actually reported on real research that had been done on the topic. And I think I've said already that you should just focus on reviews and empirical research on the topics that have come up. Geographical locations are interesting because it'll tell you that where most of this work is actually done. So if we're, for example, taking findings that are primarily distilled from, say, a US context, nothing wrong with that, of course, but it is a different working culture. How relevant is that to, say, an Irish context where religion and spirituality are perhaps experienced differently? I don't know. Interestingly, as well, side note on that article was that there was a huge amount of the research was conducted in the Iranian context, and of course there are many cultural differences, many similarities as well. So those two have to be borne in mind. Here's one: the general type of the methodological approach used was it qualitative? That means did they study words? Did they study people's accounts of things? Were they based on kind of cultural observations? Or were they quantitative? Were they based on surveys, questionnaire approaches, or did they mix the two? And then what specific research methods were applied? This is interesting because it shows you that people are, that there might be an imbalance in the type of approaches that people take to things. I think this is important. This is something that I kind of see a little bit in my whistleblowing research, is that a huge proportion of the research that is done in whistleblowing, not all of it, there's some really interesting stuff that's done there, but a huge proportion of it are based on surveys amongst university students. And the difficulty is that that's based on, and they're presented with a vignette or an example of what would they do, and of course thinking about what you would do in a hypothetical scenario is completely different to what people actually do in an embedded work scenario where they know and maybe close allies of or friends with or have relationships with the people who may be doing the wrongdoing. So it's a lot more nuanced than that. And sorry, I suppose the implication of that is that more research is needed on people who are actually faced with whistleblowing scenarios and whether they should report them or not. Sideline there, but you can probably see why that's important. In this, I looked at what the unit of analysis was. Was it the nurse managers? Was it administrators? Was it executives, nurses, or patients? Who was studied in these surveys? In these studies. So the unit of analysis was important. I asked, was a specific faith group identified, and if so, what faith groups? And this was important for this research because it was on religion in the context of nursing. And then who benefited from the outputs? Was it patients, families, nurses, or managers? The results of these, if you want to see how they're briefly summarized, are on pages 294 and 295. Just going to take a quick look at them in case you need any ideas about how this might be done. So at the bottom of page, there's 293 where I mentioned those. There's a Prisma chart. We'll come back to that in the next video. I found things like there were different weightings given to religion in a lot of ones. Once again, I'll come back to this and help you to distill how that is. The vast majority of I got this down to 47 articles. Talk about that in the next video again. Many the vast majority of them, nearly 3/4, mentioned the geographical location, and the vast majority of them, 85% of them, were empirical studies. So there's kind of some general commentary on where they were. Most research was undertaken in the USA and Iran, but there was a big difference of the amount of research that was produced. I've used a title here to summarize where most of the research was published. You can see that there's a huge preponderance of it in the Journal of Nursing Management, probably not surprising because it is a nursing management title, and the Journal of Advanced Nursing. I summarize here which ones use qualitative approaches or quantitative approaches at the very end. 4 articles didn't state that they used them. The evidence collected demonstrated that research interest in the topic was increasing. There's some of my growth rates in the articles analysed on the different fields. But up here, there's a summary of the different types of methods that use. So this really was just a way of kind of picking through each abstract and looking for pieces of information. I'll talk about the implications of this for your own study shortly. The beneficiaries of these, there's the different units of analysis there, and these are the people who were seen as being the beneficiaries of them at the very end. You can see the type of methods that were used, the specific ones, cross-sectional review, questionnaires, and that. Okay, so what does this mean for you when you're looking for information in your articles? Divide up your abstracts and your articles equally amongst members of your group and pick through them. You probably start off with the abstracts to get as much information as you can as possible. And the source of publication, the journal titles, as I mentioned, I think in the first video, you can get this very easily by analyzing the results on the Social Sciences Citation Index. Again, do not cut and paste directly from that screen. You can rekey them and put them into a table, but do not cut and paste from a screen grab, because that is very, very close to plagiarism. In fact, it is plagiarism, I think. it'll show up and turn it in, or whatever submission section that you use. So don't do it, just replicate the results. The type of article, I'll talk about this in a little bit in the next video as well. Because we're just looking at empirical articles, you'll be able to get rid of ones that are conceptual or opinions of editorials, just again focused on reviews or empirical articles. You probably think, oh, I've already done that at an earlier stage. Sometimes they creep through on the Social Sciences Citation Index. Not a fault of the system, of course, it's just probably the way that the authors have uploaded them. Because then you can answer which one of these will you remove from your analysis, decrease your workload. You can look at the geographical location of the study if reported, maybe do a table on that and then comment on it. Again, general type of methodological approach used, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods. Then you can do a table on the specific methods applied and do a commentary on it. The unit of analysis, is this students, senior managers, CEOs, administrators, followers? Who benefits from the outputs? Is it a researcher? Is it an employee? Is it a manager? Is it none? Are they not stated? Whistleblowers, HR specialists, religious groups, lawyers. These are the things that you are picking through, right, as individuals and then looking at them. Now, the reason that I say this, you notice that I said that you have to decide what types of information you look for in your articles before you actually go to look for them. That's so you can decide as a group what the key categories are going to be as you look through them. And then as an individual, if you see anything else that's interesting in them, then you can identify those, perhaps share them with the group as well. So while you're doing that work, it's interesting to keep a broad overview of trends that you see coming up in the articles. Anything that strikes you while you're looking through your set of articles, maybe people aren't looking at this, and I think that this might be an interesting topic to look into. What is the research on Machiavellianism in leadership missing? What's the research on, what don't we know on the basis of looking at this about what how somebody becomes a narcissistic leader? What are the are there upsides to having a psychopathic leader in play? Don't know. What's missing? What type of methods aren't being used to study whistleblowing that could really help us understand how to protect whistleblowers and how to make it a legitimate process? What are the who isn't being studied in studies of religious discrimination of the workplace, for example? Now, in the next lecture, we're going to look at how you categorize the literature that you've had, and we're going to look at how you might look about reducing it a little bit more. And again, might be well worth looking at the article of mine that I mentioned there already that is available on the Social Sciences Citation Index.